Hi, welcome everyone that's come to see this. My name's Kerr Gardiner and I'm one of the senior analytics consultants at Jisc, looking after our learning analytics services. So this talk kind of follows on from the last talk that was here, which is about trying to emphasise the fact that with learning analytics, or shortened to LA, it's not really about the technology, though sometimes it's seen as that. It's actually about what you do with the data. And as more and more universities are deploying learning analytics, too often what happens is there's a focus on the data, getting the data right, getting the technology right, which is really good. But actually, it's what you do with that data once you've got it. And that's where the real success of learning analytics comes. It's not about the data, it's about what you do with it. And this applies whether you've got an in-house system or whether you've got a commercial system, such as the Jisc Learning Analytics service. So in this session, we're going to be looking at the practical uses of learning analytics to support the student journey. I'm very pleased to have with me today Dr. Megan Banham, who is Director of Student Support and Engagement at Leeds Trinity University, and also Professor Graham Bird, Associate Pro-Vice Chancellor of Teaching and Learning at Bangor University. Both Megan and Graham are got responsibilities for learning analytics at their institution, and I'll be asking them some questions just about how they're actually using the learning analytics. So can I just start by asking each of you to describe just briefly how you use your system, who looks at the data, and what your processes are for engaging with students that are flagged by your system. And if I can come to you, Megan, first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Kerr. Yes, so we use our learner analytics system holistically across the university at Leeds Trinity University. So we have a student academic engagement policy, and that is very much, the learner analytics system is very much embedded in that. So I would say, as much as we talk about the data and the tech being important, I'd say even more important is you have to make sure how you use learner analytics is process driven. So you know what you want your processes to be and what you want the data to find out before you try and implement a system. Before you make it fit. So our use of the system is administered centrally by the student engagement team. And they have a series of interventions and support according to different flags of a level of a student's disengagement where they reach out and signpost students to support. But it is used by all professional services staff who work with that team, as well as academic staff. So it's very much of our personal tutoring system at LTU, where staff bring up the personal student's individual dashboard as a way to inform conversations in personal tutoring meetings to support that student individually. And module tutors and module leads use the module data too to look at trends with attendance, engagement with assessments, things of that nature. And then we use it with other professional services too. So we work quite closely with mental health and wellbeing, disability services to cross-reference that academic engagement data with other levels of engagement or disengagement with the services, and to make sure that we're flagging and signposting students whose whose level of engagement might be an indicator of other risk factors, such as financial well-being or mental well-being.
Oh, really interesting. And Graham?
Yeah, no, very similar actually. I suppose fundamentally we're using it as a tool to help support our work with maximising student retention and ultimately towards achieving good student outcomes as well. I think we use it at sort of, I guess, multiple levels within the institution. There are academic end users, be they personal tutors, module organisers, senior tutors, etc. And then equally a range of sort of professional services users. And again, that could be within student administration, who are coming at it more from our engagement policy perspective, or through to more our sort of wellbeing service, who are using that data to help sort of inform their conversations with students, help them to design interventions potentially, and sort of follow up with those. So to an extent that they're all sort of interlinked naturally, and some of those users are using some of the different bits of data a little differently, but they're all sort of ultimately, as I said, what we're trying to do is do what we can to sort of maximise student outcomes and sort of maximise retention ultimately.
Yep. You both mentioned about using the data to inform conversations. Have you done any work to find out just those people having those conversations, how useful is the data to them? I know they're using it, but have you had any feedback about how useful it is and how they're actually using that data, perhaps some examples to construct the dialogue they might have with the student? I'll come to you, Graham, first this time.
No, for sure. I mean, I probably couldn't give you a nice, simple X% of people said this type number, but absolutely. I'll give you perhaps two examples from the academic domain. So we have had good feedback from academic users as personal tutors that it helps them have informed conversations. Ultimately, that there is an evidence base that they can have sort of, as I say, informed conversations with students for multiple different reasons, and that has been seen as a positive. Often academics like evidence, don't we? And having a degree of sort of numeric evidence that they can lean on has proved very sort of positive. And also then sort of secondly, more again within schools working at a cohort level, able to interrogate trends within data at a cohort level has allowed some of our sort of, be they sort of senior tutor team or student engagement team to think about how they could do things differently in their own schools in terms of talking with the student body as a whole around, could be study expectations, around designing, for example, sort of designing welcome week activities that pick up on the trends they're seeing in the data at a slightly larger cohort level.
Right. Yeah. Megan?
Quite similar to Graham, really. At that individual level, we've had really good feedback from academic personal tutors who appreciate that kind of framework to organize a personal tutorial around. So to have those conversation starters with students, to be able to look at whether it's numeric attendance data or submission data, to I guess get more information from students, because sometimes students might not be forthcoming with if they're having challenges or difficulties. But if we've got, that kind of evidence where we can say, oh, well, I can see here, this class you're attending and you're doing really well, but in this class we seem to be falling down a little bit, or what happened here? And often that opens the door to more kind of pastoral and well-being conversations that we can then signpost them to other services. So, for example, we had some really good feedback from our money advice team, because a personal tutor was able to refer a student through who was missing a particular class and really falling behind in a particular class. And it turns out they were really having difficulty affording the travel to that particular lesson, and they also had to work. So the shifts they had to pick up, to pay their rent, conflicted with that particular class. So we were able to refer them to the money advice team, and and make adjustments and support them in that way, and that wouldn't have been able to happen if we had been able to discuss that trend of data with the students. And similarly with Graham, at a module level and at a cohort level, they really appreciate being able to look at those trends in data and interrogate that, and having maybe individual student conversations on the back of that, but also using that data to inform future lesson planning.
Yeah. Again, really interesting. One, that you're both saying similar things, even though, Graham, you've got an in-house system, and Megan, you're using the Jisc system, and also the trends. But have you found any trends, sort of patterns emerging that have enabled you to refine your overall support offering to make it more, if I can use the words, more focused or more efficient? So you've already mentioned about it's helping individuals focus what they are doing, but at more institutional level, have you found the data helping you to make holistic changes or refinements? Megan first.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we look at the data over a semester or over an academic year, kind of reflecting back on that, we can look at what trends were emerging with perhaps particular cohorts or particular groups of students. I mean, one big change that we made was with our pre-enrollment work, thanks to our Jisc Learner Analytics data, because what we were noticing was we were having really poor attendance. Students check in their attendance, and the attendance was quite poor in the first 2 weeks of term. And what we were finding out was they were actually not able to check in because they hadn't enrolled in time, or they were facing barriers with digital literacy and being able to do that. Because you have to go through levels of multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're not,
That's always
if you're
been a
not,
problem.
if you're not fully enrolled, you don't have all your permissions. So we were able to see trends in that in particular schools, and as a result we changed our pre-enrollment comms that went out to students, and we provided pre-enrollment webinars and pre-registration phone calls to help students make sure they're fully registered and kind of overcome all those barriers to registration, and therefore they could hit their ground running and we'd have accurate attendance data.
Okay. So has that worked?
It's worked. It's worked really, really well. It's really saved a lot of staff time. It's saved a lot of student stress. The IT help desk really likes us for it.
I'll bet
they've had fewer students come through, and it means we've got accurate attendance data. So we had those students were there, but they couldn't check in. So we could focus our efforts on the students who we knew were definitely not there.
Graham.
Yeah, perhaps one slightly different example actually that we've seen sort of come out from some of the stuff we've done is the ability to dig into sort of reasons for withdrawal data and to sort of collate and analyse that, and actually spotting some trends that we perhaps maybe not quite didn't expect to see, but just in certain places, for example, around reasons for withdrawal around course expectation actually, and students actually once at university not quite thinking what it was they were doing, they're actually doing. And we're not talking massive numbers, but it's just been quite instructive actually in certain areas, has just helped to inform maybe our sort of marketing publication type material. And I guess to the end point being hopefully ensuring that the folks you've got coming to you both knowing exactly what they're going to come for and are on the right course fundamentally. And that's been sort of a little bit of I wouldn't say an eye-opener, but it's just been but maybe a slightly sort of beneficial edge case, if that sort of makes sense. I think was sort of one there. And also on the timings, we're actually just also being able to, with a slightly better way of analysing that data, looking at the change in timings of withdrawals and giving schools in particular the opportunity to interrogate that data in terms of what they know is going on in their curricula at key times. And if they are seeing a relative spike in withdrawals for a particular reason, could they do something differently within their school level processes or curriculum design that might just help to sort of help the students out who perhaps are finding themselves a little bit sort of stressed at that time.
And I think that curriculum design aspect is an area where learning analytics can help you understand the engagement with the different parts of a module and different parts of a course, and hopefully identify opportunities for change. Talking about the data side of things, one of the things which we come across around the sector is about who does the interpretation of the data, and do they have the training to understand the data? So, for example, academics are trained in how to use data in their subject field, but this is perhaps different data. And also, if they're doing the interaction with the student, do they know how to actually, what services are available to support? So, could you just sort of talk a little bit about, who does that interpretation? Is that a central body then pushes it out, or are people left to do it individually? Graham, do you want to come in on that?
In short, both.
So,
as I say, our student admin team operate our formal sort of engagement and attendance policy, in part at least because they need to do it for students who are visa holders, but it sort of wraps around all students. So I guess that sort of, there is that bit that's done, and part of that process involves signposting through the communications that go out through that to services. And then obviously there's the use of that and the interrogation at a school level, the more academic led. And that can operate at a couple of different levels within school. There is certainly, we have guidance on on how best to utilise the data and the types of conversations to be had, but there's a real focus on signposting there, you know, and that's wrapped within our sort of personal tutor training more broadly, and just that importance of sort of signposting to sources of support, and I think is sort of the key message there.
Thanks. Megan?
Quite similar. So our student engagement team, they sit within student support and engagement, and they centrally manage that data. So they follow up on the attendance, they track attendance and engagement. For compliance reasons, we've got several courses with PRSB requirements. We have students on visas, but to follow up everyone as well. So all students are covered by our student academic engagement policy. And they are trained to interrogate that data at an individual level, but also at a population level, so at a module level. They do bring that data to meetings with schools and discuss, kind of bring trends and challenges to schools with their students. But that is interrogated by program leads. The program leads we extract the data into a Power BI report for program leads and for heads of school as well, to look at that in terms of trends across the curriculum.
All right. And talking about, with the data, one of the questions that comes up quite often is that some of the data involved can be considered sensitive, sort of personal data, not just in terms of the UK sort of GDPR. Has this been considered in the development of, when you've been developing your processes? I presume this has all been considered as you go.
Yes, it has. So in terms of our kind of quantifiable data, it pulls in, attendance, submissions, VLE usage, library usage. So that's fairly, not very, controversial. Yeah. But we do have qualitative data alongside of that. So we do have training for academic staff in terms of, and for professional services staff, and kind of the notes they need to leave on a need-to-know basis. So students who are handled from our, mental health and wellbeing team or disability services, they have their clinical case notes, and they put, the information that is needed to know, so that, if referrals have been made or students are accessing a particular service, then whoever else is talking to that student can bear that in mind. So all that's very carefully thought out and planned in the process.
Yeah, likewise, I think our numeric data is a bit more uncontroversial. It can be seen by a wider body of staff. The more qualitative information, the sort of notes there's a hierarchy of sort of confidentiality and a hierarchy of access based upon role. So there's there is a degree of sort of care taken over who sees what. I think it's a very fair debate to have, though. I think there are back and forths, and are we a little bit too cautious? Because actually, we should share information more widely because it's part of our core function. It's a tricky one.
And there's the option of having students look at their data too. So that having a student-facing data portal, the students will be seeing what we're saying.
What the staff are seeing.
What should they be seeing? Are we too careful? What do we need to be sharing?
That's an important point. Say all our students can see their own data, certainly in terms of their sort of attendance data and all those points. The students can see exactly the same data that staff can see about them.
Really?
So I think that sort of clarity is quite important, I think.
It's great. See we're almost up to time, and I know you're all dying to get the keynote as well, but just one last very quick yes/no question. Deploying learning analytics can be a lot of effort. From your points of view, personally, has it been worth it? Megan?
Yes, definitely. It's been a very, very hard work, but very worth it. It's been really very transformative for our student outcomes and our ability to support that.
Lovely. Graham?
Yes.
Yeah.
Communicate and evidence the benefits. Have clarity on who does what with what.
Lovely.
Don't feel you need 1,000 different data sets either.
I think that's a really good point. So I'm looking at the time now. I'd just like to say thank you very much to Graham and to Megan for really informative feedback on how they're actually using it. So I'd like to...
Thank you.